Hello, this is Brant Ashcroft from McKinney, Texas. Here to talk a little bit about some of this data that's come out recently. I've seen a lot of this on social media, different places about the 6% only COVID deaths. I kind of want to show some data that I've pulled together, and I want to walk through that. The first thing I want to do is kind of show everybody how we get this data, where you go to actually get the data, because you can go and get this data yourself. I think it's important that we know what we're looking at. We don't just believe a lot of the stuff that comes out, kind of verify for ourselves. So this is the website. As you can see, this is cdc.gov. There's a whole, all the extra stuff there. It'll take you to this site here if you want to go get this data. And there's something called comorbidities is the information that's there. The interesting thing with this is they basically kind of give you a summary real quick that says basically for 6% of deaths, COVID-19 was the only cause mentioned. And they say on average there's about 2.6 additional conditions or causes per death. The interesting thing is you can actually download the data, like where it says right here, download data. So you can go click into that. You can download a file that you basically, it downloads it into a kind of a CSV file or something you can put into Excel. That data is actually right here. So when you download the data, this is what it looks like. And as you can tell, there's not a lot of, this is not an easy thing to try to make sense of. So for work, I actually spend a lot of time putting pivot tables together. This screen here shows a summary of this data, and I'll walk through this real quick with you so we can get to some of the, because I think it's important, again, to show where this data is coming from. We can actually do our own analysis on it. We don't have to just go by what's on Facebook or whatever other means for getting this information. We can actually go look ourselves. So basically, for those that don't know about pivot tables, essentially I pull in every different category. The ones up top, you can kind of do some filters. The only filter I'm doing in this entire data set, I'm not changing any of the raw data. I'm just filtering on the US. And the reason I'm doing that is because they have the data by US and by state. So if you don't just, so if you leave it as it is, you double count everything. So you actually have to just filter down to the state level on US, which is the United States of America. This data, again, is through like February through about August. It's not exactly what we might see on something like, the sites, World Meter, those kind of things. I think the issue there is that the CDC is behind in the reporting. There's a couple other things I'll just point out here. If you go into this area here, you can see all the state abbreviations, and then there's something down here called YC, which I do not know what YC is. It's not any state that I've ever heard of. And I think that data should be included, but I don't know for sure, so I'm actually excluding it. But just so you know, this is a way you can you can actually look at your own state to get some information. So interestingly enough, when we pull this data in, there's actually a lot of good things we can learn here. Let me hide this real quick so we can see everything on one screen. So basically here, what you can see is there's up above is your age groups. There's your COVID right here. So that's your deaths by age group. When we talk about 6%, we're talking about 9,000 deaths, basically 9 to 10,000, depending on the numbers that you're getting. In the US, based on how I did it, it's about 9,000. Here's all your other conditions here. One of these to me is a little bit bogus. If I was doing this for myself I would actually remove this one. I'm not going to do that because but I would do that because this says basically all other, and I'm not sure what that means. So it's really hard to do an analysis on all other. But the rest of them you'll recognize, flu, pneumonia, diabetes, cardiac arrest, sepsis, heart failure, etc. I'm not a doctor. I don't know everything about all these diseases, what they are, what causes them. But some of these obviously, are life, are due to life choices or age and all kinds of other different things. But basically, here's your causes of death, and then it says you can see it by age group. So these are in addition to COVID. So for every one COVID death, you could have one, you could have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these other causes, right? So that's basically what this data is telling us. Interesting to me is if you go over here, this is the percentage of instances per COVID death. So in this one's probably better look at the flu and pneumonia. So in COVID deaths, the 153, 42% of those actually also had flu or pneumonia, which I found to be very interesting. So they had COVID and they had flu and pneumonia. And you can just go down the list here. Cardiac arrest is an example. And I guess in my mind, I'm thinking heart attack. That's probably what killed the person, the heart attack. They had COVID, so they listed it on the death certificate. But in reality, heart attack is what kills somebody. Same thing with heart failure. So you can take a look at this yourself and try to determine which ones really, when it comes down to it, is it COVID or is it they had COVID, they died from a heart attack? Interestingly enough, this one down here, intentional and unintentional. I'm not sure what that means exactly. Poisoning. These are so unfortunate things we got to talk about. I don't know if this is maybe suicide, something like that. But obviously, if someone committed suicide and they had COVID, they're still listing COVID as a cause of death, along with suicide and maybe some other things. I mean, that's just something to think about. So the data, the numbers for COVID, they are the numbers, but there's at least some additional thought that has to go into okay, what does that mean exactly? By age group, interesting, when you look at the age groups, they basically start at 25 and then go 10 years out, except 0 for 24. And you ask yourself, well, why are they doing that? And the reason is because you have to get to 24 before you have any really meaningful data. If you went 0 through 10, you'd have almost nothing. You went 11 through 20, you'd have almost nothing, or very few. So they have to actually have a number that you can actually have some meaningful data. So this is the percentage of total deaths by age group. So 0 to 24, this is deaths. This is not, positive tests, nothing like that. But this is deaths by age group. So it's 0.2% for 0 to 24. And then you can kind of look here all the way up to 85, 85 plus is 32%, right? So here's this. So basically this is your percentage by age group. Other thing that this is able to do is this basically is a formula that takes all your other factors and it adds them together. And then it says, okay, so based on your, those factors, how many additional causes of death by age group? And I found it interesting that for the 0 to 24, it was almost 3, which tells me that these people that passed away, that died from this, were not healthy individuals, which we know, but this kind of proves that out. And then it's actually it's pretty high. 0 to 24 is as high as 45 to 54. So in essence, you could say, well, those age group, the ones that died, they were as unhealthy as someone that was 45 to 54 that also passed away from the same thing, right? So they were not healthy. Same thing with 65 through 74, almost gets to 3. And then it's also interesting that it drops when you get to 85. And I wondered if that's just because if you get to 85, you have a pretty good, you have to have some pretty good health to get to 85. Let's be honest. You have to have a pretty good lifestyle. You're doing some good things, likely in terms of exercise, diet, etc., to get to 85. So it's just a data point. Again, this number here is your average. It's about 2.8. The site says 2.6. So there's some data here that I don't have the decoder ring exactly. I'm just kind of doing what I know how to do based on what I know. If I add in that YC, it actually does get much closer to 2.6. But again, I don't know what YC is in terms of a state or territory, or maybe they just don't. Maybe that's the category if they don't know. I'm not sure what it is. So here's the thing that I think is this data, again, is available. Anybody can go get it. You can all do this analysis as long as you can put a pivot table together, which is probably not that common, but somebody could do it. I'd be glad to send this to anybody that wants to see it. They can do their own, it's again, there's no, the data is the data. There's no bias here. This is just the numbers. The numbers are the numbers. You can't, there's nothing, political, nothing really biased about numbers. And then, then you just do the math and this is what you get. So a couple things, the questions we bring up to ourselves in terms of our kids getting back to school, we wonder, at least myself, and many of us wonder, based on this information, this data, why are we taking these kids that are in this 0-20 to 0-24 category and forcing them, number one, to isolate themselves. We call it social distancing, which is baloney. It's isolation, is what it is. We're having them where we're basically telling them they can't socialize with each other. At least this is what's going on in our school district. They got to sit apart from each other at lunch. They can't play on recess. I mean, the list goes on and on of crazy things we're doing to these kids that have essentially no risk, unless they have health issues. The health issues, these kids are essentially, there's nothing going to happen to them. And we've been hearing this for months. For somehow we still can't understand that's we're doing way more damage to these kids by what we're doing than COVID is ever going to do to them. And the last thing is the mask being optional. It's these things are tied together. The mask, social isolation. These things are tied with each other, and we need to understand that the data does not support any of these things that we're doing. I'm sorry, even teachers, even the teachers here, their age is up to, we'll say even up to 65, it's 20% of the, of the deaths, which equates to a total of about 30,000. Okay. And some of those teachers had other things, again, it's hard to tell exactly because I don't have individual case data, but some of those teachers had heart issues. Some of them had, had other things, that could have potentially, and COVID probably was the last straw, but they were already not in good health. So anyway, so here's the data. This is something that's been going around quite a bit, and I wanted to actually kind of provide more color, I guess, more information in terms of what the data actually says. Again, someone can go get this. They can do this themselves, and I hope this is informational and helpful. And thanks for listening.